Call to order this special meeting, Navasota City Council at 4:31 p.m. Item 2, remarks of the visitors.
Yes, sir.
Item 3 is a workshop on the City of Navasota's Code of Ethics Policy and Council Relations Policy.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Heminger.
Yes, sir, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to come back and kind of continue our discussion from about a month ago. We had an opportunity to receive some input from you guys, and I had a couple individual conversations for those that had questions for me and some thoughts. We also had our presentation at the TML conference. We also heard from some of the other communities of some of the feedback and some of the thoughts and some of the experiences, things that they're challenged with and are experiencing. And so Carrie and I just wanted to continue that conversation tonight, to get some additional feedback and just kind of go through and answer any questions or discuss areas. Didn't do this tonight with a defined presentation. Wanted it to be open to you all to cover whatever areas you have on your mind or want us to focus in on, and also to get an opportunity for you to provide some input for us, and then we will take that direction and try to draft something that we feel like meets your interest. And so specifically with regard to the ethics policy, Carrie and I have talked, and it seemed like there were a couple things that were that we took note of. Number one being whether or not we want to use exclusively an outside legal counsel or use the city's legal counsel for some of those items, particularly as the gatekeeper in the initial review. And then also whether or not we wanted that to be a standing committee. The current policy says that we will have a standing committee, and we don't have one right now. And so if that is the interest, it sounded like there was some thoughts over not having one. And Kerry and I have talked about it. I think he and I are in agreement that we feel like, unfortunately, if we tried to just make just-in-time appointments, so to speak, when an issue arises, that really probably lends itself to a pretty inefficient way to handle it, because the appointees would then be so far behind. They would have no knowledge about what they're expected to do, no opportunity to review things in advance, to be prepared to evaluate the situations, that we feel like it would take so much of an effort to get them brought up to speed before they could even start their quote unquote investigation, that it would just really lend itself to, like I said, a pretty inefficient operation. But with that said, there's no legal requirement that you have a sitting committee. And if that's how you all feel like you want, because of the lack of historical complaints and use of this committee, then we will certainly write the policy. However, as long as it's legal, we're okay with whatever your direction is. And kind of the same thing on the council relations policy. Wanted to just kind of go through that and give you all an opportunity to have some input and give us some direction there. So I'll start with whichever one you want, or we'll start wherever you guys want. But just kind of, Carrie, you want to say anything before we just kind of kick it over to them? Or
Sure, you bet, Mayor, Council. Just to be clear, as Robert said, we're not saying that, and I'm certainly not advocating that it has to be a certain way with respect to independent legal counsel. If you want to keep it in the same fashion that it is, where city attorney is the gatekeeper, I'm glad to do that. You know, either way y'all want to do it is fine with me. I think there are pros and cons to either approach. And y'all are the ultimate decision maker, and so whatever you decide, I think it's legal either way. And so I don't want to come across as saying, hey, it's got to be this certain way. And it may have come across that way at the initial meeting. And so I just want to be clear that that's certainly not my intent. You have a lot of discretion in this area, and just want to make sure that whatever product that we put together is in line with your intent and your wishes and how you want to see this committee structured. So with that, I'll stop and answer any questions.
Just a point of clarification, though, I think our current policy addressed the committee, which has never really been, it was just like there, and it's never really been created anyway, correct?
Yeah, I don't know that historically there's ever been one. There hasn't been in the 6 months I've been here, but I know there's been a long history. It's been there for over 20 years. So certainly there could have been one before, but I just wasn't aware of it.
Susan and I looked at each other and we're shaking our heads.
I'm not aware of it.
I'm not aware of any others.
Where is our crossover from an ethics violation to a criminal violation?
You can actually have both. I think the policy that you have now, that's in place right now, it says that the city attorney makes the determination about whether or not it's criminal or civil, and or if it's neither one of those, and this probably ought to be addressed in any changes, but if it's because you can have both. You could, a criminal violation can be a violation of the ethics policy. So I would recommend that we address that. So I don't know that council member, that there is a crossover. I would say that you could have an ethics violation without it being a criminal violation, but you could also have an ethics violation that is a criminal violation at the same time. So I think the way the policy is, we ought to address that possibility in the policy and make sure that what I would recommend to the council is that's covered in terms of, just because it may be criminally prosecuted would not necessarily remove that incident from being complained on in terms of this ethics policy.
Who do we cover and how in this ethics? We're just getting into the whole disciplinary situation type things, and most of the things at the lower level and everything are just going to be taken care of by the city manager.
Yes.
As an employer.
In our personnel policy, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't really address ethics type things, does it?
Well, certainly can. Yeah, our personnel handbook can certainly have an ethics component that can either mirror what you all have as an ethics policy that you all have adopted. It can be completely separate. But I think it's worthwhile to note that our city charter does give the city manager pretty broad latitude to handle issues with the employees as a whole. And that's one of the things that we talked about for those that were at the presentation at TML. That some would argue that, the ethics policy should apply to everyone. I don't disagree, but I don't know that we need to convene a separate committee or go to the expense of having an outside legal counsel look at that if the city manager is empowered and expected to enforce that. Then I think that is certainly something that you all have a city manager that will do, and you don't need to go to any additional expense to do so. Much the same with your boards and commissions. While you can make it, apply, and it probably should apply, I don't know that at the same time that you need to have any expenses for that, because by our charter, you all have the authority to remove or unappoint members of the boards and committees that you've appointed, with very few exceptions, and can do so if you all feel like a violation has taken place that someone needs to be replaced. So I think both of those, while it makes a lot of sense for the policy to apply from the standards perspective, I don't know that the same procedure necessarily needs to apply, because there are other sources of handling sanctions, if you will.
Yeah, I definitely think boards and commissions should, have to abide by the same type ethics that we do.
Absolutely.
Because they present They present things to us.
Right, and I think that's certainly something that we can incorporate into the policy and the ordinance, where it clearly says that it applies to all of those, to employees, to boards and commission members. However, the sanctions or the punishments or the disciplinary action, whatever the case may be, might be handled in a different manner. It might be a different process for that.
Yeah, as far as Kerry being the legal counsel on that, I definitely think that should just stay that way personally, because it's any other way, you're just adding expense that's, I don't think, necessary.
You were talking about the reason to have a standing committee potentially already in place because of the timing. What's the rush? I mean, if there was an ethical, there's no removal of a council member from office potentially. So the rush would be to give a determination whether they violated the ethics policy or not, and then a censure. So, or whatever the other, whatever else could be determined to be appropriate. But what's the rush to make that happen?
I think for me, it's really about not letting it linger over not casting a gray cloud over the community and over the council while this is in doubt or is lingering. Particularly if it's something that's of public awareness, or something that has been widely known. Does that make sense?
It
And
does.
I'll let Kerry kind of give his thoughts, but that, in my mind, it's really about the efficiency of handling it so that it doesn't linger. But is there, from a legal perspective, other reasons?
I think, as I said last time, I think one of the primary benefits would be that you would have you'd have a commission that's in place already that would not need to undergo any training. They've already been trained. They understand the process. And so you would do that periodically, I think, as, you set terms of office. You would train them periodically to understand what their role is. And if a complaint would come in that they're ready to go, and there typically are timelines built into the ordinance, and we can adjust those, that would say, okay, well, a decision about whether or not to proceed or move forward would need to be made in X days. And so it would be more efficient, I think, to have a commission that's already trained and understands the process, rather than that being part of what needs to happen after a complaint is filed. Again, it's not a legal issue. It's more of, okay, we do have a standing committee that understands the ordinance, understands the standards of conduct, understands the process, and is ready to proceed without, any additional training. And to make an appointment of a committee while a complaint is pending, there could be some accusations of, well, you put this person on here because they're a friend, and those sorts of things, which, I'm not saying would be true, but that somebody could argue that.
I see both. I was thinking that same thing, that they would. I'm glad to say, or to hear you say, regular training, because if we just said we haven't had any complaints, and you put somebody on a committee and they sit on this committee for 5 years and haven't seen anything, but if there is an ongoing,
Right.
they ought to meet quarterly or semi-annually or something, just to keep refreshed, I think, as to what they need to be. And I agree somewhat in what you say. If you pick everybody on an at-need basis, there is going to be accusations that they were handpicked to go toward the city or whatnot. But then on the other hand, I think, well, of course, they've been on that committee. They know what the city wants, and they're going to do what the city says.
True. Yeah.
in the same
Well,
sort
and
of.
and if they're pre-picked, you also,
So I think it's one of those, you're gonna get it no matter what we do. I think probably there's gonna be naysayers out there that are gonna make accusations, I think. But, if it is a standing committee, I think needs to be put in their guideline that you will meet semi-annually or something, just.
At some point in all of this, so you gotta make an assumption that somebody's honest. You gotta make an assumption that there is some kind of basis type thing that not everybody is gonna be suspect.
Well, the whole thing is not guilty until proven.
well, that's why, again, I would feel comfortable with Kerry being the gatekeeper
Yeah.
that would
I have no
determine whether it
problem with
would
that.
go any further,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I would think that, well, what I think is that we need a standing committee, and whether it be 3 or 5 people, and, I would suggest that they all be attorneys here in town.
They probably all want money. Because
Service, you know,
it's
just
kind of
like,
falling into their bailiwick.
they'll let them know up front, it's not a paying position, you know, it's just.
I was thinking, I know a couple.
Just to step back to the training aspect, briefly, there's a city that, all we do for that city is represent the ethics, commission. And we have annual training. It takes about an hour. It's really not a burdensome or costly thing to do. So to provide regular training to the board I just want y'all to, understand that we're not talking about a huge cost. It would be regular so that those that roll on and roll on. As you're pointing out, hey, we can't just let it sit for 5 years. Annually has been sufficient in terms of keeping the board members apprised of the ordinance and ordinance changes, if any, and that sort of thing. So just wanted to follow up with that thought.
But maybe a former council member, something like that would maybe be a good one to be a part of that. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Not saying nothing's gonna happen, but just be prepared for the future.
Right.
Just in case something new, I guess. Just getting prepared for it,
Yes, sir.
because one day it may happen.
Well, we know it happens. That little clipping we get in our email, we run through so fast every day. Certainly gives enough examples of things happening in various cities of various sizes.
Yes. Well, we heard a few cities at our presentation at TML that let us count our blessings. There were some of the things we're not having to
They
deal
were
with
laying
here in
out the dirty
Navasota.
laundry, weren't they? I was like wanting to say, hey, dude, y'all might want to talk after the meeting. Might not want to bring all that up here.
No, ethics presentation was gonna solve their issues. I'm sure it was deep seated, yeah.
So what's the consensus of the committee? Whether we have a standing committee or an ad hoc committee?
I'm leaning toward more standing committee and have them rotate. I don't know, term limit, I mean, say 3-4 years possibly, but not have everybody at the same time, have it staggered. But what's a usual committee, number?
Oh, I think 7, 5 to 7, something that's odd in number, not too big. I think that's an ideal size, something that's manageable. You don't, because you're going to be scheduling and having to fight that battle. So I think 5 to 7 would be, it's y'all's discretion, but that seems like a manageable number.
maybe set it up on a 3-year and then, or 4, and then 2, 2, and 3.
Do there even have to be terms? I mean, if someone is selected that is great, do we want to have them go off just because we've set up a limit to the amount of time they can stay on?
I don't know that you've put limits on any of your other committees. I think that's,
Yeah.
that you all are free to
Yeah.
appoint or not appoint. And so I think that you give yourself the freedom that if you get a retired attorney that, you know, did mediation as a career and wants to serve the community by doing this, why make them get off?
But doesn't want to do too much.
Yeah. You know, so there, I think there's cases that can be made there. Let the council, the sitting council decide when.
Or maybe
Long
not
enough
term
is a
limits,
matter.
I guess I said that.
We're blessed with the situation now where,
They could be reappointed.
yeah, we have,
You know, it's not an
More-
indefinite.
you know, we're blessed with the situation where we have more than enough people volunteering for some of these things. And it would satisfy their needs sometimes to have something like this where they didn't have to do too much, but were available, knew they were helping in some way.
As long as as they understand that it's not something that we really want them to meet about.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, we hope they never have to.
Yeah.
Or we have to, right?
We don't want you to ever do anything, but will you serve?
Will you agree to have your name on there? I think 5 would be manageable. I mean, I don't think we need to do 7.
Yeah, I would be for the standing committee also, but you know, I think that, we should look at people who represent the community and know which direction that we're going in and who we could, who would be loyal to everybody.
And we want somebody that's ethically beyond reproach.
Right.
And I
To ensure
believe
that
that
everyone
we
is
had it
safe.
set up where it's not, they don't have to necessarily be citizens of Navasota. Because I kind of like having elected officials from the county or
An
something like
outside.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, someone that's outside the,
potentially. What concerns me is, in light of recent events, having someone come in and say, we don't really like that council person, so we're gonna do whatever we can to
Yeah.
to nix them. And so I don't know how you avoid that. I mean, if it's 5 people, maybe we can, but I'm just concerned that there will be some motivation of a takeover or coup or whatever. Not that that's real, but stranger things have happened.
Sure.
How do you watch for that? Or, I mean, if it's people that we pick, and it's a consensus, I don't know how that could happen.
right.
But at the same time, it'd be kind of hard for a group to do that when that person don't have many calls.
I'm just
Well, this
saying
committee doesn't
that-
have the power to do anything beyond a reprimand, I guess.
I get it. I understand.
So I think it specifically states in there that they can't remove elected officials from office. Now, you can, I guess, it's within the purview of it to remove people from boards and commissions, but we have that ability anyway.
Had that
We do.
anyway.
Yeah, that's what I said
Yeah.
right from the start.
Councilman Jesser, that's accurate, and this board would not have the ability to remove a council member, remove anybody from appointment or other office, or even advisory committee. So, you know, that power would, remain either in state law or in the charter, which the charter states that only, this body can remove one another for violations of the charter and those sorts of things, so.
And
We did not see that changing by this policy.
would this committee have to follow the Open Meetings Act?
It would, yes, sir. But much of what the compliance and so forth, much of it could be handled in executive session.
Mhm.
So, you know, the hearing and so forth. could be-
Personnel, I guess.
Right.
So Kerry, you saying that this body here it's got the power to remove anyone on this dais here?
No, sir, the opposite.
No.
The opposite.
That body does not have the authority to do
Okay.
so. Only the council can remove another council member for a charter violation.
That's by charter.
Correct, that's in the charter. And that would not be changed by this ethics policy.
Would this committee be characterized as quasi judicial?
It is, yes, sir. And that's something that we would want to clarify a bit because the provision in the current policy is a little bit, I think goes a little bit too far in terms of defining what quasi judicial means. And so we would clean that up a little bit, you know, obviously for your approval. But it certainly would be. Yes, sir.
So what are the current, not positions, but where was it in the old ordinance of who would serve on a committee?
I don't think it's in,
Yeah, I feel like I read something that said that.
it's in section 7 in the ethics. Talking about it.
Depends on which version you have. 'Cause
Yeah, exactly. I have no idea. It's somewhere here.
The current version, and I'm not sure which section it is that you're looking at, maybe it's in 7, but this is 8.2, which says, the Ethics Commission will consist of 5 members that will serve without compensation. The 5-member commission shall be chosen by the city council in a manner that ensures fair and unbiased representation, who have no connection with the person under investigation or with the facts. City attorney shall furnish the Ethics Commission with whatever legal assistance is necessary in carrying out its functions. And then the Ethics Commission selects one of its members as the chairman and a secretary, who need not be a member.
This was in the old ordinance.
Right here. It's in 7.2.
Other than that,
What does
there's
it
not a
say?
ton of,
Yeah, in 7.2 in the current one, in the
Okay.
old one, it says the Navasota Ethics Commission will consist of 5 members, all of whom shall serve without compensation. The members of the Ethics Commission shall be public officials from neighboring cities and counties outside of Grimes County. And then it has much the same language. The city attorney shall furnish the board whatever legal assistance necessary in carrying out its functions.
okay, I am looking at the old one. My apologies.
What does it say about the outside?
It says that the members would be
Okay.
public officials from neighboring cities and counties outside of Grimes County.
So it would not even be people from in
Yeah, that's what the old.
It would not, that's the old one. And that's what, and we actually, in today's best practices, we felt like, you know, you would want folks from inside your city. And the recommendation, what we found, and we discussed last time on the PowerPoint was, you know, maybe you do find attorneys or folks that served in those types of roles, previous city employment, previous elected officials here, you know, folks that, have at least that, again, knowledge. And I guess that's a part of that is because it's going to meet so seldomly that, you know, you have someone that has that knowledge already because of their career or their past employment
Yeah, a
or
little more
service,
general where it doesn't
you know.
nail you to public officials from other, I mean, they could be that, but doesn't have to be just that.
Right.
Well, that seemed to imply that they would all be.
It did, no, it says that they will, it
They
says
will be.
shall,
Yeah.
shall be public officials.
The recommendation is to change that.
Is to change that, yeah, to much what you're discussing now, what Councilman Harris said about, you know, maybe it is lawyers or, you know, folks that have served here before or that are, you know, dedicated to the community as you said, above reproach. You know, I think there's ways for us to write that into there, but to let you all make that determination, make the appointments.
You have to have a,
And in some of our recent conversations, we've even been talking about doing annual training for all of our boards and commissions. This would just be one more that we add to that, and make sure that we at least sit with them once a year and talk about the Open Meetings Act and the requirements of their particular assignment and that kind of stuff. So I think we certainly can.
So are you leaning towards the standing committee?
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like that's kind of where we want to head.
Mhm.
So is there any reason not to describe the 5 people that we want on the panel? I mean, I'm just saying, if you leave it up to just picking anyone, do we at some point get somebody who's probably, as opposed to describing, I want attorneys, 2 attorneys, 1 former council person, blah, blah, blah. And is there a reason not to describe what those positions look like?
In a fairly general sense, but at least that way it's kind of covers all those bases
Sure.
that we want to cover, I think. In a general, but not so specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why we keep going back to do we need an ethics board that's beyond reproach to select the ethics committee? I don't know that we want to describe them by occupations. It seemed obvious that a lawyer might be a good chance.
Yeah.
But I can look at a certain amount of lawyers here and say, I wouldn't want that one on there.
Yeah.
There are lawyers and there are lawyers, and not talking about their ethics, but just talking about their areas of expertise.
Critical thinking.
Yeah, well, a lawyer that does nothing but bankruptcies is
Probably.
not going to be the same thing as a lawyer that does criminal cases. So.
Yeah, looking back at the notes from last time, what the recommendation was, and I don't know that we had this written into the actual policy just yet, but it was recommending residents of Navasota who have demonstrated high ethical standards and integrity, recommending those residents with a background that would demonstrate, with a background that would be consistent with reviewing ethics violations, such as retired lawyers and judges, ethics or compliance professionals, retired city managers or city clerks, academicians, and disallowing officials from neighboring cities where we might have business matters dealing with, where that could be a conflict for someone like that. But I think the intent was just to describe it in somewhat broad terms so that you all can make those assignments and not get so narrow that, oh my gosh, we have to have, 2 of this and 1 of this. And I don't think we wanted to get quite that specific, but
No, I like just listing out so that.
just
such
as
as.
some examples,
Yeah.
but not
So-
an all-inclusive
such as-
list. Yeah,
such
such
as.
as. Mhm.
Well, because maybe 20 years from now, we'll be reviewing this again and wondering, what were they thinking?
What's a lawyer?
Yeah. It's a little thing on this machine.
He won.
Yeah, he won.
So what do y'all think about? I think, and the last one is the outside the county, but I'm saying that, are we thinking about just inside the city limits, or are we talking about Grimes County?
Well, I think it's broad enough that someone outside, right? Or is it?
It certainly could be. We hadn't written that into it yet. I think, the case can be made for either. That I don't know that you, where my mind is going is, I don't know that I would be so specific that it has to be, but maybe you put in there somehow that because there may not be sufficient applicants from within the city limits, but someone that lives in the ETJ or right outside the city limits that fits this to a T, and you want to make the appointment, I think you give yourself that latitude.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I don't want to limit ourselves to not be able to do that.
Right.
Right.
You have a judge that
Right.
retires and moves up from Houston and
Right.
has 10 acres out here in the Blackjacks or something.
Make it where it's open to that being
Mhm.
a possibility to do that.
So we sticking with the number 5 or 7?
5's gonna be hard enough.
Yeah, exactly. 5 would be hard enough. Plus, that's what it was before, so.
So it's
And
5
it's
of
an
us.
uneven number.
So it's 5 of us, so is each one of us gonna just nominate someone? Go out and talk to someone and come back with a name?
I don't think so. I think we do it like the other commissions.
It's the broader net.
Let them apply.
Just advertise and let them apply?
But I mean, I think council should vote, like if you, you're gonna put these 5 candidates up and let us,
Is this something we can go in the executive session with, Kerry?
Yeah, because they are not gonna be an advisory in nature board, you can make those in an you can discuss it in executive session. Can't make the decision in executive, sorry.
That's exactly right, yes.
That way, if something
Right.
comes up that's,
Right.
you want to be sensitive.
If we're gonna do it like that, then, I would rather be in executive session if we're gonna do like we do all the rest of the boards.
Okay.
Is there anything else that really stood out, Carrie, that was not being addressed in your opinion? Especially kind of cleaning things up and
There were a few other things, just
definitions and.
yes, sir. There were a few other things in terms of definitions and making sure that we had a good definition of conflict of interest that's consistent with state law. Or if you wanted to be more restrictive, that would be another issue. But I think in terms of being more restrictive, the standards of conduct that are listed in the policy are helpful in terms of looking at conduct that you would want to prohibit. So nothing major, Mayor.
And does anybody have a real issue with Carrie being the quote gatekeeper rather than hiring an outside legal counsel at that expense?
Well, I think that's comparable to a civil proceedings type thing or something where you would have a grand jury or something. Somebody has to make the decision, so if we can't trust the lawyer, who can we trust?
Yeah, and again, if Carrie
can't trust
feels
our
that he needs additional counsel or whatever, I mean, that would be his.
And that would be my duty to you to say,
Yeah.
hey, I think I'm, compromised or whatever in this
Yeah.
situation. It would come to
Yeah.
you and say, in this specific situation, it might be better to go outside, but I doubt that would come up very often, but it could. So, in a unique situation, that might be something that would occur, but I think that would be
You've
fair.
already been involved in some of the lower level things that we've had. I mean, I believe personnel malfeasance of some kind, so it's not a new,
That's correct.
new gig.
That's correct.
Did we decide on, is this just gonna be for the board? Is it gonna be for the office heads? Is it gonna be for all the employees? I don't think we've come to a conclusion with that.
I think what I was trying to suggest a few minutes ago was that, and I'm gonna lean on Carrie's expertise to help with the crafting of this, but I would like it to be written such that the the rules apply to everyone. They apply to our employees, they apply to the boards and commissions, but the procedure for enforcement might be different based on city manager has a procedure already to hold employees accountable to the rules that they are governed by. It doesn't have to go through a whole nother committee review. The council can remove a board member or committee member by unappointing them and appointing someone different. I don't know that you have to go through the whole process of a separate committee reviewing them aside from you all. So I think it applies to them, but the procedure for sanctions or discipline or enforcement might be different because we already have processes in place. Does that make sense, Carrie? Is
Yeah,
that
and that would
something-
be in line with what we already do as appointment, as with P and Z and others, and as he has with who he hires.
Right.
I mean, it would be right in line with that.
So indirectly, this committee will just be for us.
Unless you see a need to use them more than that, I think it can be that way.
I mean, that's the
Well, it would
intention
be,
of,
the committee would be for us, but also boards and commissions.
That's not what he just said, though.
Oh,
Yeah, I think you can set it up either way, but you all are already in place with the authority to remove a committee member
okay.
if you feel like they need to be removed. Right, Carrie?
That's correct. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
It might be an easy way out if there's certain sensibilities that would be offended by the council taking and removing some people from some of the boards or something, so it gives us a buffer if we need to use it.
Well, I feel like we just did that a few months ago and we didn't really have a problem appointing folks that may be interested, so.
Yeah, but people are different. So most people it wouldn't bother, but some people it is.
Bothered me.
We're dealing with the interaction.
Okay, so,
I think it makes more sense to allow council to deal with issues with the
Yeah.
boards than to have them.
I think in most cases, unless it was something really egregious, and in that case, we're probably looking at turning over into the criminal aspect of it, which we shouldn't touch.
Because my thinking, if somebody do something that's gonna lead to this anyway, they just need to step down and move on.
You would hope that we put people in a place that would do that.
In an ideal situation, which it obviously is not if we got to this point.
one other note that I had that I just want to get clarity on as we write it up, I saw where, or the conversation about the city attorney or city's legal counsel being the gatekeeper or being the initial review. Is that how we're understanding it? That if a complaint came in, the city attorney would initially review it to make sure that the elements of an offense, so to speak, are present before referring it to the committee, or would the committee as a whole review it to determine if it's merited for a hearing?
I think Kerry would be.
The city attorney would be the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
The review.
That's
Got
my
it,
opinion.
got it. I'm just making sure I'm going down all of my notes to make sure I got them all.
Otherwise, he's not a gatekeeper.
That's right.
It's a gate opener.
Gates are just wide open, right? What happens when you leave the gate open? The cows get loose.
Have to round them up.
pretty much give you what you need,
I think
sir?
so. I think we've got it on the ethics.
On making it apply to everyone, are we gonna require all the new employees to read through this? They already are reading the personnel handbook, which should cover most of the things there. So if we expect them to be covered by this, then you have to give them a copy of this. And that's cruel and unusual punishment. For some guy that's gonna go out there and cut the grass and everything, and have to read all of that.
Sign this paper saying you received it.
Yeah,
I mean, you do it how you want to. but
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
how
we
I
have
see
a,
it.
we have a signature page on the handbook, and we could easily incorporate this into the handbook when we, you know,
make sure whatever is gonna be included gets just put in.
Yeah, I think it's good for them to know that going in, that there's, you know, hey, an ethics commitment covers a lot of things that
I'm
may not be
wondering-
covered on.
I'm wondering, we're dealing with retention of people, and do we wanna make it too hard for them to sign on?
well, I don't think expecting ethical behavior is too hard.
I'm not concerned about the behavior as much as I'm just concerned about the requirement of reading this long document type thing and signing up for it. They're already, if everything is covered in the employee handbook.
Yeah,
should be
my
sufficient.
thought is that we will either amend what's in the handbook to mirror this, or strip that out and replace it with a reference to this document. And so that they would only have it one time,
Good,
and it'll all be part of one document that they sign for.
good.
Yeah, we'll make it efficient
Yeah,
like that.
I'd prefer that they go into the employee handbook.
Yes, sir. Got it. Wrote it down.
People used to read back in the day.
Not everybody's read everything, though. How many,
Now nobody reads anything
how many
except the
things,
paper.
how many signatures have you made of pieces of paper that you couldn't tell anything about what was on it?
I watch lots of employees sign those.
Where did they sign it?
Just give me a check.
Okay,
I think we got that one.
all right. We will adjourn.
I think they want to discuss council relations.